Dr. George Eliades, and today we're speaking about Daniel chapters 7 to 9. And I'm really grateful that George is here because he has great knowledge of the language, the history, the culture of this part of the world, and most importantly, he's got the linguistic skills to penetrate some of these scriptures. And it does take a bit of penetration of the scriptures. We were only saying a few minutes ago that so often when there's a difficult phrase or verse, even in translations, some of the mysteries are kind of glossed over. Yeah. And it's not until you go back to the Septuagint, not until you go back to the Hebrew.
The Hebrew, yes.
Yeah, that you really uncover a lot of the meaning. So with the book of Daniel, many of us who went to Sunday school as children, we're familiar with it, and we're familiar with the heroic stories of Daniel. And often when you read through from there, you come to these apocryphal, apocalyptic type revelations, and there's layers of prophecy there. So we come to the 70 years and the 70 weeks. We understand that Daniel himself was studying the prophetic words of Jeremiah, yes. And he was trying to penetrate that, and he was pushing into God as well. He wasn't just sitting with the scripture. He was really praying about it and waiting on God, yes. To get the deeper understanding. And I think that this is what is fascinating about these three chapters, Daniel 7 to 9, is that you have these layers. You have what was going on immediately there in their captivity with the prophetic word that was contemporary to Daniel's time. And then you have what's going on in the kingdoms around about and the developing history. But then they push through into the future, yeah. And into the book of Revelation.
Exactly.
There's a clear connection. So, George, can you tell me a little bit about your understanding of these chapters and some of these symbols which are almost impenetrable for most of us?
First of all, good afternoon, and thank you for having me again. I'll try to make myself understood as much as possible. One thing I would like to mention before we actually get into the prophetic part of this book is that I'm not an expert in it. I have studied, yes, and I have certain views about what it says, but by no means am I an authority on it. However, in chapter 7 of the book of Daniel, we see Daniel having certain visions. And his visions come in the form of different animals, which he calls beasts in his dreams. So it gives us even the time that he's got them. He says in the first year of Belteshazzar, king of Babylon, that Belteshazzar was the son of Nebuchadnezzar, who by now is dead. And Nebuchadnezzar is the one that actually took Daniel in and kept him in his royal palace because he saw in Daniel something that he could not see in his other wise men. Let's put it this way. Yes. Yeah. And because Daniel had the Spirit of the Lord upon him, and because Daniel was giving him an understanding of things that he wanted to know, he had him in the palace, and he even made him the third most powerful person in his empire. So he was above all the satraps that were governing the different satrapies in the Persian Empire, and he was directly under the king. Now, in his visions, this particular time, Nebuchadnezzar is not in the scene, his son is in the scene, and Daniel has visions. The very first one, he says here, 4 great beasts came up from the sea, each different to the other. Now, when we read came up from the sea, it's not the actual sea. It's not the literal sea that is meant here. I take it to mean from the peoples of the earth, from the population of the earth, like from those that live on the earth, certain kingdoms arose.
Right.
And the first one was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till the wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and a man's heart was given to it. So that lion did not have a lion's heart in it. It had a man's heart in it. What is a man's heart? A man's heart is always hungry, always wants more and more and more. The interesting thing is that this is the very first vision that Daniel has, and I don't think it goes into a chronological order. Like from the lion comes the bear, from the bear comes the leopard. I don't think they have a chronological order, but they are given to us in this particular order. And we are now asked to interpret what does that lion mean and what nation does it represent. And in my opinion, that lion represents the nation of Great Britain, England. And I was looking at the coat of arms of Great Britain just before I came here. And the coat of arms of Great Britain
It is. It's the upright lion, which you probably can't see.
Yeah.
But it is.
On one side.
Yes.
And on the other side, you have the unicorn.
The unicorn.
But the crown is on the lion's head.
It is.
So I feel and I believe that the lion represents, that's also part of the... in Daniel's visions has wings on its back. But it says like eagle's wings, not just a bird's wings, not a sparrow's wings, they're eagle's wings, the most powerful wings that a bird can have. They were plucked off. What happened to those wings? Where were they given? Now I believe they were given to the United States of America. And that is the United States of America. The emblem of the United States of America is the bald eagle. And once the wings were plucked off and the United States of America began rear feet, and it took a crown on its head. By the plucking of the wings, I believe that also pronounces the independence of the United States from England.
That's fascinating because a lot of people, particularly Americans, they always want to know where America is in the scriptures.
In the Bible.
You know, where are the princes and angels over their nation, and you know, where is their future in here? So that's a very fascinating idea.
It is. Well, like I said, I'm not an authority, but this is how I view it. That's how I see it.
And certainly that alliance, you know, I mean, that's how the United States became the world's peacekeepers in a lot of ways, or police officers.
And the alliance exists even today.
Even today,
Yes.
yes.
So, and I think the alliance will keep existing. It will not, well, it will have fluctuations. They will have different opinions in different things. But as far as military alliance is concerned, I think there will always be an alliance between the two countries.
And those countries and their allies have dominated the whole of the 20th century.
Yes, they have. They have.
And those nations are the ones that were probably most instrumental in the establishment
Yes.
of the nation of Israel.
Yes, they were.
They were.
Yeah, especially the United Nations and the and Great Britain.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, without them, there would not have been a state of Israel today.
That's right.
Yeah. Despite all the oppositions that they had, the nation of Israel is there today. And it is because mainly of the United States and the British involvement in it.
So naming that kingdom where it is, well, it's not chronological at all, is it?
No.
Yeah.
It begins with that because I believe it is the beginning of the reinstatement of the nation of Israel. But following that particular beast, there is another one that comes in the scene, and that is the bear. After that, he saw a bear, and it was on its side, and it had 3 ribs on its mouth. I see the bear as being a nation of Russia under the communistic regime.
Right. Yep.
And it's got 3 ribs in its mouth, which is indicative to, in order for the bear to stand up and to devour much flesh, like it's given the authority to devour much flesh, needed to get rid of certain elements of opposition that were there.
There was a lot of people, well, under Lenin, Stalin.
Yes, that's right. But what was the main thing that they were against? They were against the Tsars, the royal, let's say, families of Russia. They were against religion.
Yep.
That was another thing that was stopped altogether when communism took over.
Yep.
And they were also against the aristocracy.
Yes.
Because the aristocracy is the very few that had the money, that had the wealth, and that were governing the nation. So communism rose, and those 3 ribs that we see in the bear's mouth, I believe, could be the Tsars, represented by one of the ribs, aristocracy represented by one of the other ribs, and religion represented by the 3rd rib. So once he got rid of those 3 obstacles, he was now able to stand on his own 2 feet, that bear, and devour the flesh that he was allowed to devour. And when we're talking about flesh, of course, we're talking about nations that will come under the communistic idea and will adopt communism and will bring themselves under what we knew as the Iron Curtain.
And there were so many states, so many nations.
Yep.
I mean, all of those stand states.
Yes. That's right.
Mongolia, Estonia.
Yes.
Huge nations.
All them. Yes.
Swallowed up whole. Yeah.
Yep.
For what? Decades. 50,
For decades,
60
yes.
years.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Well, what's happening in the Ukraine now?
Yes.
Well, they were behind the Iron Curtain as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They decided to break away from Russia.
Yeah.
And this is something that the Russian leaders do not take lightly.
Well, no, because it's the bread bowl.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
because
right.
of their agriculture.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It is. Although Russia has got huge areas of fertile land,
Yeah.
they still depended on that.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's how I see the bear.
That's very, very interesting. Okay, so
Yes.
then the next beast.
The next beast,
Yeah,
which is a leopard, I think.
leopard with four
Yes.
wings.
Leopard with 4 wings and
Four
4 heads.
heads.
I mean, it's an odd description of a leopard, isn't it?
It is, yes.
Traditionally, they believe that this particular beast represents the Greek Empire because of the 4 wings and because of the 4 heads. Because I do not see the leopard as an animal that was ever associated with Greek history or Greek
No.
culture.
And in other places, don't we have the interpretation of the goat representing?
Exactly, which is the following chapter.
Yes.
So why would he give us the same nations twice?
Yeah, yep.
And that's why I don't think that particular animal represents the Empire of Greece. Who does it represent? I couldn't tell you for sure because it does have 4 wings. 4 wings, it could speak of the smoothness and the speed, the swiftness with which this particular empire came into this world. It has 4 heads. Does it mean that it had 4 different leaders? 4 different nations that brought the...
Yes, I wonder if it's 4 nations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because of that, I could not give you a real explanation about this particular beast. But leopard, I associate it with the continent of Africa.
Africa sounds like a candidate.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what did come out of Africa and spread all over the world swiftly and quickly?
Well, once the British began to relinquish their power throughout the earth, the Christianity that they had carried with them was forced into retreat as well. So wherever British dominion reduced, other religions
Yeah.
began to become powerful.
It did. And one of those religions is Islam.
Yes.
And I feel that the leopard is somehow associated with Islam. Because Islam did spread everywhere
Yep.
and quickly.
Yep.
And it did not spread like Christianity spread by preaching. It spread by the sword.
Yep.
If you did not become a Muslim, you were beheaded.
Well, we certainly see that in nations of the world today.
Yes.
We certainly do.
So
I find it interesting that these nations that we're talking about, these kingdoms that we're talking about, they're all powers that exist right now in the world.
they are.
Yeah.
They are. The only thing we cannot pinpoint who are the nations represented by the leopard.
Yeah.
Well, I cannot pinpoint. I cannot say who it is. I can relate it to the continent of Africa, but nations,
Yeah.
I cannot. And there is 4 major ones. It's not just one. It's 4 major ones. And if they come out of Africa, who are those 4 main ones? I know Egypt can be one. Ethiopia can be another one, known as Cush in the Bible. The Sudan. So there's many candidates, to be honest with you.
There are.
Yes.
There's a lot of candidates.
Yes. But unfortunately, this is the one particular vision or the one particular beast that I cannot give you a clear answer
Yeah.
as to what it does represent.
Yeah. Have you got an answer for the beast with the iron teeth?
Yeah. After this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and tramping the residue with its feet. It was different from all the other beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns.
Yeah.
10 horns speak of 10 different kings.
So for a long time, people thought this was the EU.
Yes. But the thing is that the EU started as 5 or 6 to begin with. Then it went to 10. And when it went to 10, I thought, oh, well, this must be the 10 kings of the last beast. But now it's 27.
Yeah, yeah.
So I don't think it is the AU. But it goes on verse 8, it says, I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before whom 3 of these first horns were plucked out by the roots, and there in this horn were eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth full speaking pompous words. That little horn that comes out of the 10. As I read it, and as I read the rest of the vision that he has, I cannot help it but thinking about him, the little horn, being the future Antichrist. Because of the fact that he's got eyes all around him, he's got a mouth that speaks pompous words. And later on, it tells us his activities. It tells us what this little horn does. That fourth beast that Daniel has a vision of, to begin with, in my opinion, speaks of the Roman Empire that follows. And the Roman Empire was an empire that ruled with a fist of iron. It brought peace, but the peace that it brought, it was by the sword. It imparted fear into the people, not rest and peace. There were no wars after it, only because they were too strong for anyone to fight.
Right.
Until the right time came. With the Greek Empire, which chapter 8 speaks of it,
Yeah.
We won't go into that. We'll look at it when we get into chapter 8. But the little horn, which I said represents the future Antichrist or the future man of sin, the lawless one. Look what Daniel says about him. I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, and the hair of his head was like pure wool. This is a vision that he has in his dreams, but it is a description that fits into the vision that John the Apostle had in the book of Revelations when he turned around to see who was talking with him, and he saw Christ in this particular form.
Yeah.
And the hair of his head was like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame, its wheels a burning fire. A fiery stream issued and came forth from before him. 1,000 of thousands ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. The court was seated and the books were opened. So we have a vision now of end times.
Yeah.
Because it is during the end times in chapter 21 of the book of Revelations that the books are opened and judgment is being passed. And the book says that
Yeah.
whoever was not found in the book, in the Lamb's Book of Life,
Yeah.
was cast out into the lake that burns with fire and brimstone.
So this beast is the one that's there at the end.
Yes,
And this beast,
that is the little horn.
the little horn. So the others lose their kingdoms for a period of time.
3 of them are plucked out.
Yeah. But not this one, not the little horn.
No, the little horn is not plucked out, but he causes the other 3 to be plucked out. I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. As for the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. But that's another difficult passage to explain,
Yeah.
because if that little horn represents the Antichrist who is to come, and that little horn is destroyed and thrown into the burning flame, the nations or the other horns that were with him were allowed to continue for a while.
Yeah.
How does it fit historically, or how does it fit in the book of Revelations?
I don't know, George. I hope
Yes.
you're going to tell me.
Well, I couldn't really give you an answer for that one either. The only thing I can tell you is this: that little horn is a representative of what is to come, of the man of sin that is going to rule over the earth. However, that little horn has a history of its own.
Yeah.
That little horn did actually live and did exist, and it was a king that did whatever is mentioned here.
Yes.
It did have a pompous mouth. It did have dominion.
Yeah.
And I can only identify him as a king called Antiochus Epiphanes.
Antiochus, yeah. I mean, this is the issue, isn't it, all the time? Because throughout history, when people read the scriptures,
Yes.
they see them in the light of their own history and their own time,
Yeah.
their own recent time.
Yeah, that's right. But he has a dual role here.
Yeah.
He represents the future in a way, but
Yep.
he also represents the king for whom he stood. And that king, I believe, is Antiochus Epiphanes, because have you read in the Apocrypha, the book of the Maccabees?
I've read bits of it, yeah.
Bits of it. Well, the book of Maccabees, actually there is 2 different books of Maccabees. Maccabees 1 and Maccabees 2, they both speak of the same period of time, and they both speak about the activities of the Maccabean family
Yeah.
that stood against that particular king.
Yes.
Now, what this king did, there is a description in the book of Maccabees of what this king ordered his subjects to do to the Jews.
Yep. Yep.
Okay? And the things they did were real atrocities.
Yes.
They besides the fact they used the temple of God to put in a statue of Zeus in it, and used the altar of the temple to give a sacrifice
Yep.
of swine, of pig,
Yeah.
to Zeus, which was
An abomination.
an abomination to the nation of Israel.
Yep.
And that is mentioned in the book of Maccabees as the abomination that brings desolation, which is something that Daniel mentions in his prophecies. However, the one that Daniel speaks of has not taken place yet, because we have in chapter 24 of the book of Matthew, the Lord Jesus speaking, saying to the congregation he was in the synagogue actually, and he says, not in the synagogue, in the temple. When you see the abomination of desolation spoken of the prophet Daniel, and let the reader understand, there is this little passage under it that says, let the reader understand. What is there really to understand? Then when you see it, let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains. That has not happened yet. Although the Maccabees mention that particular sacrifice as the abomination of desolation, excuse me, the one that Daniel is talking about has not yet happened. It is to come. And it will come when that little horn, or the representative of that little horn, comes to power.
So, you know, the abomination of desolation, you don't think it'll be an exact replica of what happened in the time of Antiochus?
It'll be something similar.
Very similar.
It'll be something similar. What Antiochus did, he installed a statue of Zeus in the temple, to which he offered the sacrifice.
Yeah.
What will happen at the time of Revelation when the beast takes over? He will install, with the help of his false prophet, an image on the temple.
Yeah.
Now, it's not going to be a statue like it was in Antiochus' case, but it's going to be an image. What kind of an image is it going to be? Well, we do not know. It could very well be a statue. It could very well be something else. I really don't know. I couldn't tell you. But if it is, let's say, in the form of a statue, that image will be given the power to speak like a man.
Yeah.
And because of this, the majority of the people will believe.
Yeah.
And that's why, where is it? I think it's in the book of Thessalonians in chapter 2 where Paul says they believed the lie because they rejected the truth. And this is what is going to take place, and that is the kind of deception that will take place. And unfortunately, the nation of Israel or the Jews will be in the midst of it.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's interesting, you know, I knew a very elderly lady who had been she'd been through the Second World War as a child in a country that was occupied by the Nazis. And in every church, the swastika replaced the cross. Yeah. And she used to say, nothing worse can happen. She'd say, you know, there can't be any hell after what we've lived through.
Yes, that's right.
And I think for a lot of people, that's it. If they've lived through horrors in their own time.
Yes, they did. Yes, they did. Many people.
Many people have,
Many
and they
people.
think, this is it, this is it.
Yes.
And of course, that's the sin of man. It's the sin of man.
Yes, it is. It is.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, it's not going to end, not until Christ comes back.
Yeah.
And rules over the earth for 1,000 years. And that's when the earth will actually experience the peace that they always wanted to have.
Yeah. So what about verse 14 in chapter 7? How does your translation read?
Verse 14, then to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom the one which shall not be destroyed. And we're only talking about the Lord Jesus Christ here. To him was given the dominion.
Yeah.
And that is when the world will actually experience the peace that it always longed for. That's when the whole world, is it in Philippians where it says that every knee shall see him and every knee shall bow and every mouth confess that he is Lord? That is the time that this will actually take place.
Yeah.
And but this is to come.
Yeah.
It hasn't happened yet.
No. It's reassuring because it's repeated, you know.
It is repeated.
That the kingdom of our God
Exactly.
is the one that's going to have the victory.
Exactly. Despite of what happens before that, despite of all the beasts that come forth, despite of the last one with the iron teeth and the little horn and everything else, none of them will be successful enough to dominate.
How do you understand those iron teeth? Because they always remind me of modern warfare.
Yes, it is. It is modern warfare, but it was also warfare of that particular time too. It can represent the sword. It can represent the bows and arrows. It can represent the lances and everything else they had. But it can also represent today's weapons as well. And with iron teeth, he could devour anything he wanted to devour.
Yeah.
It's the same today with the weapons that we have today. The nations that have those weapons can devour anything they want to devour.
Yeah.
And yep. But everything is going to come at an end when Christ comes forth, and it says here, to him was given dominion and glory and a kingdom.
Yeah.
That kingdom is not just a small kingdom. This is the kingdom that he will rule over the world.
Yeah. So did we talk about the ram and the goat?
We did, and it's in the other chapter, but the ram and the goat are the ones that they're easy to interpret because Gabriel, the angel Gabriel, gives the interpretation to Daniel.
Yeah.
And Daniel sees those visions, and he is perplexed. He doesn't know what they mean. He sees the ram, which is a magnificent animal and stands proudly. Then he sees the goat with only one horn in its head, killing the ram. After the goat, he sees the next beast that comes forth, which is
Not the two-horned, no.
the ram pushing westward. And I was considering, suddenly a male goat came forth, came from the west across the surface of the whole earth without touching the ground, and the goat that had notable horn between his eyes. Then he came to the ram that had two horns, which I had seen standing beside the river, and ran at him with furious power. And I saw him confronting the ram. Now, let's speak about the ram. The ram had two horns. The ram is the alliance of the Medes and the Persians.
Right.
And they were the ones that come forth first, and they were the ones that actually made war and dominated. They tried, see, what we're having here, and it says here,
we're back into the history of that.
it's history. It's all history, and it all has to do. Yes, it all has to do with East against the West.
Yes.
Because the horn that was on the goat that came out, it came from the West.
Yeah.
Meaning it came out from the European part of the world. It came out from Greece. That particular goat is related to the Greeks.
Yeah.
And the horn that is on the goat speaks of Alexander, who was the ruler at that particular time, bringing the Greek forces against the Persians. The only reason they did that is because Persia was continually attacking and was continually wanting to cross from the east to the west.
Yeah, yeah.
So what we have here, we have a clash between the east and the west, same as we have today.
Yep.
Even today, the clash is between east and west. It's not between anything else. It's the east and the west. It never stopped.
Yes.
It goes on today.
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting because Israel sat in the middle of that for hundreds of years.
It did.
One kingdom after another.
Yes,
Dominating
that's right.
them and
Yes,
taking them into captivity.
exactly. Some kingdoms and some kings were harsher towards Israel than others.
Yeah.
However, everyone came through the land,
Yeah.
and everyone left their prince.
Yeah. But they were small and powerless. They were such a small nation.
Yes.
They were just at
They
the
were.
mercy of everyone around them.
But this is, again, one example of how God is always the protector of Israel.
Yeah.
No matter what happens, no matter what the situation it looks like they're not going to survive. In some miraculous way,
Yeah.
they're still there.
It's a total miracle.
It is.
It is.
I was reading the views and the comments of a reporter during the Six-Day War. And he was a reporter from the United States who was in the area at that particular time. And he was talking with one of the Israeli officers. And he was standing in amazement at what was actually taking place. How the forces of the nations that came against Israel were being defeated. Not only being defeated, but they were really running away. And he asks the officer, he says, how is that happening? What is happening there? And the officer said, I cannot explain it, but we are not fighting the war.
But hasn't it always been like that? It has been. I mean, even, like 1917.
Yeah.
I
It's
mean,
always
the
been
Turkish
like that.
mayor brought the keys to the city out.
Exactly, at
handed them
Allenby,
over.
yes.
Allenby handed the keys over. And, one of the most amazing things is that even today, even though Israel is mainly a secular nation, the people are not religious, but the people maintain the culture, the Jewish culture.
They do.
Without knowing that
do.
it's their religious culture.
Yeah, they do.
And without knowing also that God designed it for their health and for their strength.
Yes.
And for the integrity of the nation.
Yes, that's right. And let's not forget that God has not finished with Israel.
No.
Despite the fact that some people believe that Israel is not in God's books anymore, that God doesn't care about Israel anymore. This is wrong. How they get that, where they get that, I don't know. But Israel has not finished.
Yeah.
Romans chapter 9, from 9, 10, 11, tells us the history of Israel and why God has not finished with Israel. And we as Christians should be, we owe Israel because I understand from the book of Romans in chapter 11 that God used Israel as a sacrificial lamb so that we can come to know him. And that is why the period between the day of Pentecost and to the rapture is called the church age. And it has to do mainly with the Gentiles. And the age will finish when the numbers of the Gentiles are full.
Yep.
When the numbers of the Gentiles are full, then the church age will finish, will close. The rapture will take place, and God will turn his attention to Israel. And Paul says that thus all Israel will be saved.
Yes.
Oh, well, I firmly believe that.
Yeah. Well, I cannot deny the power of the history of the nation.
Yeah.
And the way that the Word of God reveals it
Yes.
and reveals it, you know, past, present, and future.
Yes.
We've seen so much of it in our own time.
Yes.
The restoration of Israel is in our time.
Yep. Yep.
We've seen so much restoration that other generations never saw,
No.
but they believed. I mean,
Yes.
if you go back to even to the beginning of the 20th century and late in the 19th century, it was not just the Zionists, it was many Christians
Yes.
were totally convinced
Yeah.
that the restoration of Israel was the next step in God's agenda.
Right.
So then I'm going to ask you what you think is the next step in God's agenda. Where are we up to?
Well, and as far as I know, all prophecies that needed to be fulfilled before the end of the age have been fulfilled,
Right.
as far as I know. The only one that has not been fulfilled yet is the rapture of the church. So, in my opinion, there is nothing to hinder the rapture of the church. The only thing that remains to be fulfilled is for the last Gentile to come into the church.
So, do you believe the gospel is being preached to every creature?
This is something that has concerned a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know that the gospel has been preached to every nation.
To every nation?
Yes. But to every creature, I couldn't say for sure, yes, it has been.
So the fullness of the Gentiles for you is not the salvation of all the Gentiles.
Not every Gentile. No.
It's the church, those that are intended for the church.
Yes, yes. And I do not believe in predestination either. Like,
Yeah.
you know, there is mentions of predestination in the book of, in the New Testament. But it's how you view that predestination.
Yeah.
It's not, I don't see a God who's putting the humanity before him and says, oh, I'll take him, I'll take him, I'll take her.
No, I don't see that either.
That's not how it is.
And also I think that the free will of man,
Yes.
of humanity, has always been God's priority.
Yes.
The way he respects us as humans
Yes.
is created with free will.
Yes.
At the end of the day, there are people who will stubbornly refuse.
Yes. Yet God will not interfere with their free will.
That's right.
They make their own decisions.
Yep.
So it is a decision that we make today that will determine our future in the time to come.
Yeah.
But I do not see that all Gentiles will be part of the church. Not all of them.
Well, George, I think we've gone as far as we can go today. I think we're out of time.
Thank you. I think we are out of time. And we haven't even touched
No, we haven't.
chapter 8 or 9. And I'm sorry I took
no.
too long to explain things.
We'll
but
get back to it.
Yes. But thank you for having me.
Thank you
And
for
I'm looking
talking
forward
to
for
me.
the next time.
Yes, me
We
too.
might be able to finish chapter 8 and chapter 9.
Okay.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you, everyone.